I've been using the MacBook Air with the M2 chip for over 2 months now, and I think many would agree that it's the most controversial laptop from Apple. It gave so many emotions that no MacBook compares to it. Joy, disappointment, but there is another Apple device on the market which seems like a better deal for some people, the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip. And here comes a reasonable question. What the fuck? These are two completely different devices for completely different tasks. But it's not that simple. Today we're going to compare the M2 Air and the 14-inch M1 Pro from a perspective. Which laptop is really worth getting? But let me tell you right off the bat, it's not all that clear-cut. And first, let's make one important point. If we go to eBay, we'll find out that the 14-inch MacBook is available for $1,500 to $1,700. And that's lower than Apple's official price. Of course, these laptops have probably been in service, but still, I don't think you'll get something unusable. You may notice scratches on the body, but in general, out of all the laptops on the aftermarket, MacBooks are particularly popular. Consequently, let's take the M2 MacBook Air at $1,200 and the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro, which is $300 more expensive than the previous one. And the question is, do we need to buy the M2 when for about the same money, albeit on the aftermarket, there is a more powerful Mac? And who is this MacBook for? In terms of design, they are twins, almost. The M2 Air is a bit bigger in terms of display dimensions compared to the M1 Air, but is also thinner and lighter than the M1 Pro. And let's be clear that the M1 Pro is the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro on board. It's just easier to pronounce. Of the distinguishing features, there is an SD card slot, HDMI on the right side, and an extra USB-C port in the M1 Pro, whereas M2 got only MagSafe, another USB-C, because charging is now via MagSafe, and of course, mini jack. In terms of ports, you're going to need a USB hub anyway. If we're talking about full interaction when you connect an external monitor, an external hard drive, or a USB microphone, then you will need a hub. And thanks to the HDMI port in the M1 Pro, you can connect an external monitor, but to do the same thing with the M2 Air, you should get a good hub. And cheap third-party devices will most likely damage the battery with 99% probability. And this doesn't just apply to the M2, all new MacBooks require a good adapter. And while charging via the original power adapter is generally clear, charging the MacBook via third-party units needs to be very careful because the M2 MacBook requires 30 to 35 watts for regular charging and up to 67 watts for fast charging, whereas the M1 Pro requires up to 96 watts. And I like to charge both MacBooks with this Ugreen 100-watt GaN power strip, which is called, by the way, DigiNest Pro. And I didn't have any problems with it. Moreover, this power strip is much more convenient, especially if you need to charge multiple devices at the same workspace with 7 power ports. This 100-watt power strip box can effectively organize your cluttered cables, save space, and provide a tidy workspace. It's equipped with high-speed 100-watt USB-C ports and the latest GaN tech, so you could charge your iPhone 13 to 60% in 30 minutes or fully charge your 16-inch MacBook Pro in 1.5 hours. It can power your MacBook, iPhone, tablets, other home appliances like TV, lamp, etc., and up to 7 devices at the same time with 3 AC outlets, 3 USB-C ports, and 1 USB-C-A port. With a GaN chip and fire-retardant case, the 100-watt outlet extender provides overload, overcurrent, grounded protection, and many other security features. To learn more about the Ugreen GaN power strip, click the link in the description below. If you compare the two laptops head-to-head, the speakers are immediately striking. In the M2 Air, they're hidden in the hole between the display and the keyboard, whereas in the 14-inch MacBook, the speakers are on the left and on the right, close to the keyboard. And if you listen to the sound from the two laptops separately, both laptops sound great. But the M1 Pro has a little more volume and depth. Also, the M2, just like the M1 Pro, has the notch and the 1080p webcam, whereas before the webcam was just 720p. And the image quality here is about the same. Yes, the M1 Pro has a bit more detail and less noise, but you are unlikely to notice that on a Zoom meeting. To summarize, both laptops produce an excellent image quality. And the M1 Pro is obviously thicker, and that's something to keep in mind if you travel a lot. The M2 is much more comfortable in this respect, although the display of the M2 seems visually thicker than its predecessor, and I wouldn't classify it as a disadvantage, just take it as a fact. It doesn't affect the user experience in any way. The M2 looks updated, although in comparison with the M1 Pro, the differences are insignificant. Simply the size is different. And of course the display. We get a refresh rate of 60Hz on the M2, while the M1 Pro has 120Hz. Also mini LED in the 14-inch model instead of IPS LCD, and generally all the specs are now in front of you. Overall, of course, the M1 Pro display is better, but again, this isn't a head-to-head comparison. In terms of a long-term use, I wouldn't say that 120Hz is a must for every user. Yeah, it feels smoother, but overall for me, this difference is not that critical. And also the contrast and brightness of the M1 Pro is clearly higher, but I haven't met people who constantly use their Mac at maximum screen brightness. Maybe you are such a person, you can always reveal yourself in the comment section. But considering the size, different displays, different chips installed, the performance is likely to suffer. All of Apple's claimed performance numbers are true in one way or another. It's comfortable to work on both MacBooks. However, the MacBook with the M2 chip holds the battery noticeably longer, both when used in normal mode and in low power mode. So if you need more battery life and you don't care about performance in multi-core tasks, the M2 Air is definitely your choice. But at the same time, working on both MacBooks, I didn't worry about charging every half hour, as is often the case with Windows laptops, and the MacBooks charge about the same too, somewhere around 2.5 hours. However, the M1 Pro and M2 Air both support fast charging, 50% in half an hour. So both have excellent batteries, which together with Apple Silicon produce excellent results in terms of battery life. Speaking of benchmarks, I would note the following. I don't see the point of loading both MacBooks the way that average users won't, but most likely some of our viewers will be interested. So in single core tests, the M2 even beats the M1 Pro, but when we run the multi-core test, the M1 Pro is clearly in the lead. And that makes all the difference, especially if you suddenly want to run resource-demanding apps. And now is a good time for you to write in the comments, what am I, an idiot to run complex apps on the Air model? But guys, from my experience and the experience of my friends, I will say this. I have two MacBook Airs, M1 and M2, and you know, no matter how base it is, sometimes you still want to interact with demanding software, and I think you have to consider that before you buy one. So let's still break this rule called Air is not for heavy stuff and compare these two laptops. Let's start with web surfing. Obviously, there are no problems at all. You can run a bunch of different websites, complex and simpler ones. On both M2 and M1 Pro, you won't have any problems. The only point I like to stress is that the only browser that works great on Apple Silicon is Safari. And don't get me wrong, Google Chrome works just as good, but I found that it sometimes slows down and eats up memory compared to Safari. Once again, Apple obviously optimizes its software for its hardware better. Many M2 users say that the lower part of the laptop can get quite hot in certain apps, and I could say that this indeed is true. The M2 Air has no active cooling system, whereas the M1 Pro has as much as 2 fans. And you might think that the M1 Pro would be annoying with its noise, but it's not. Even when the fans kick in to cool the processor and other components, the fans don't make a particularly loud noise. Yes, there is a noise, but to make the fans annoying, you need to get the MacBook so hot that the coolers are spinning at maximum speed, which has never happened to me during the whole time of using it. Although you can turn the coolers to max if you need to using third-party software, but in practice I don't see a particular need for this. So if you want to use heavy apps, keep your attention on the 14-inch Mac, because without cooling, M2 Air still throttles. And this doesn't mean that you cannot work on it, you can. Just compiling in different applications or rendering videos or rendering 3D models will take considerably longer. And it's also worth paying attention to the differences in terms of graphics performance. We get more cores in the M2, but the M1 Pro has even more. And everything that concerns 3D and video rendering, streaming on Twitch via OBS, Air is definitely not the best option. The M1 Pro still shows better results. Speaking of Xcode, things are quite uncertain at first glance. Both the M2 and the M1 Pro are both good at this, but the M2 has one disadvantage in the base config. If you compile over and over again, making some changes to it, it will instantly start hitting up and resetting frequencies, all thanks to the lack of active cooling. Consequently, the compilation process will take longer and longer each time. With M1 Pro, there are no such problems at all, thanks to the fans. And just so you get the idea, here is a benchmark comparison of these two MacBooks. When it comes to gaming, it's pretty straightforward. Any Apple laptop is not good for gaming. You can, of course, run some games via virtual machines like Parallels, but I personally don't find it convenient. Your best bet is to settle for games from the Apple Arcade library, although Apple Arcade games still look like mobile games on a computer. And in Apple Arcade, as I said in one of my videos, it all depends on the developer's optimization. If the developers optimize the game well, it will run smoothly on any of the Apple devices. If not, it will run fine on the M1 Pro, and on the M2, not so. It will get really hot after a while. But if you really want to, you can still play games on both laptops. Well, let's see how things are with Photoshop. Spoiler alert, Photoshop is the only app from Adobe with excellent optimization. The conclusion is that on both M2 and M1 Pro, the application works fine. But it all depends on your experience and the tasks you need to complete in Photoshop. When it comes to projects with higher resolution, M2 Air, of course, lags behind in its capabilities. But in real life, the difference is not critical, as long as we're not comparing these two machines head to head. And to sum up my impression, I can definitely say that both the M2 and the 14-inch M1 Pro are amazing laptops. If you're still planning to do demanding tasks on your future computer, I would certainly recommend the 14-inch MacBook Pro. It's kind of a monster that can handle any kind of task. But when it comes to portability and frequent travels around the world with a laptop in a backpack, the M2 Air will be a great choice. It's lighter and more compact, and an important clarification for those who want to get a more expensive config, hoping that more memory will improve performance. Think about it a few times. The new M2 with 16 gigs of unified memory and 512 plus SSD is even closer in cost to the 14-inch M1 Pro, and it will still not be as powerful as the M1 Pro. And what's more, I had a video where I told you why you should not buy the M2 MacBook right now and what new things Apple is cooking, so go ahead and click on this video and this one, and see you in the next one.